Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in. This is an emergency broadcast. Things are melting down. MSTR looks brutal, and Saylor seems to be backed into a corner. We're saying strategy is under immense pressure at this moment. The company's stock just fell below $100 for the first time since February 2024. Hitting a 25-month low after an 81% decline from its peak and wiping out nearly $153 billion in market value. What's raising eyebrows is that strategy now trades at a market capitalization of around $35 billion while holding 847,000 Bitcoin worth more than $51 billion. Michael Saylor continues to buy. He just bought 520 Bitcoin this week, despite cash reserves falling 38% this year. Supporters see a rare opportunity to buy Bitcoin at a discount through the stock. But critics argue the strategy has become a liquidity sink that depends on constant capital raising to survive. Has the market finally broken the Bitcoin treasury model? Or is this one of the biggest mispricings in Bitcoin history? We are here live to break it all down with all of you so that we can understand what is actually going on. First, I would like to introduce my co-host for today. We have none other than Publius Nakamoto. Sir, Publius, how are you doing?
I'm surviving, I guess, is the best way to look at it. It is a huge red day. And yeah, I think it's easy to come out and bash people or companies for either holding stock, et cetera, but I do think it's important to zoom out in times like this, because emotions are often the driver of decisions rather than logic. And I think this is a time where you want to be logical rather than emotional.
Sir, zooming out. You're talking about zooming out on a day like today. Well, if you do that, it doesn't look pretty. Look at this. MSTR below $100 for the first time since February 2024. This is brutal. I mean, we had the parabolic run up at the end of 24 to over 500 and around $40. And it has just been a crash ever since. And so now we are in a position with MSTR where the sharks are out. The wolves are out. And Saylor, he is facing crazy pressure. STRC, which is supposed to be the iPhone moment for strategy, doesn't seem to be doing what it was promised to do. I mean, look at this thing. We are near the crash lows, $82, well below the $100 par, above which you can buy Bitcoin, but below, he can't do much with this. I mean, this thing is supposed to self-correct, of course. They can raise the interest rate and get some more interest and have people come flood back in to try to raise the price up to 100. But so far, I mean, this thing is a year old, right? And it's, I don't know, is the thesis playing out? What is going on here, Publius?
Let's talk about STRC, because it is interesting and it is fascinating. And on the one hand, you've got a lot of the STRC bulls who are, a lot of them are very smart people, know what they're doing, and they're coming out and their opinion is, hey, this thing is totally okay. Saylor's balance sheet is not impaired. This thing is going to be fine long term. And I empathize with that view, and I do think that it probably is going to be fine. That's not really the question though, because a lot of people, and look, 89.8 or 89.6% of STRC buyers are retail buyers, right? And I don't mean this in a derogatory sense, because I guess maybe I'd classify myself as a retail buyer, but retail buyers have very different emotions and very different time preferences to institutional buyers, who are typically long-term, much more sophisticated. And again, I don't say that in a derogatory sense, but you have a lot of retail making up this STRC product. And if it is going to return to par, which I personally believe it will over the long run, what's the big deal then, right? So what I have an issue with, and what I think people are missing here, is that it's not the fact that STRC is not going to return to $100 that's the problem. It's what happens in that time. So between now and whenever this thing does get back to $100, what happens? And if you are sitting on the other end of this and you bought in at $100 or $96 in order to try capture that additional $4 of premium and appreciation, what are you going to do when you look at a chart like this and you've got 60%, 20%, 80% of your net worth sitting in what was proposed or at least marketed by Saylor as a money market fund? What are you going to do as a retail investor? Are you psychologically strong enough to hold through this period of illiquidity, right? And my gut is probably not, which is why you're seeing this chart play out like this. Initially, when the first drop happened, the initial claim from all these people was, hey, this is a leveraged play. It's basically people who took out leverage in order to take that 8% and then magnify that over time. So they basically took out a loan to lever up their portfolio to enhance that 8 to 10%. Now it's 11% yield that Saylor is promising. And they've levered that up to extract more value out of that, right? So initially everyone was saying, hey, this is what's happened. It's a leveraged play and that's what's unwinding in front of us. Then a couple of days later, it recovered and everyone was like, okay, cool. The bottom was in, that was 82, 84. And this idea of digital credit is robust, right? And then ever since that happened in the last 2, 3, 4 days, as Bitcoin has showed further weakness, this thing has continued to unwind. And we are now sitting at the bottom of this unwind so far at 82.85. And the market is truly testing how quote unquote robust STRC is.
Yeah, and right now there really don't seem to be many catalysts to get this thing back up. Of course, we saw Saylor use the cash reserves that they had that were there to pay the dividend for at least 2 years. Of course, they had sold MSTR common shares to raise those couple $1 billion in order to have enough dividends to pay for 2 years plus. But they used that to retire debt. And ever since then, and on top of that, they sold 32 Bitcoin. And since he's done that at the beginning of this month, June 1st, it's just been a horror story for everything, for MSTR.
Don't forget that Saylor can also open market buy up STRC. So he can do a couple of things. He can raise the dividend in order to make this more attractive. And we'll get into that in just a moment as to whether or not that's a good or bad thing. But he can also open market buy a lot of this in order to bid that up as a last resort. So there are a lot of things to do that Saylor can come out and actually, he has a lot of different options and different levers that he can pull, right? Which is why, again, I don't necessarily see a risk that this doesn't return to $100. The issue is the market psychology between now and then, and can people ride out that volatility when a substantial chunk of your portfolio is based in this instrument and it's just completely quote unquote depeggy, even though it's not a true peg because it's not a one-to-one, comparison. So that's the issue. And then you've got on top of this, like you've got the MSTR chart, which you can show as well. And again, I don't really have an opinion on where MSTR goes in the long run, but in the short term, I mean, can we just discuss the red flags, or at least the orange flags, ironically, that I would call them, that have been shown by Saylor in the last 6 to 12 months, and how he's changed from this cult-like god that a lot of Bitcoin Twitter worships and are, super bullish on him when he was talking about, hey, Bitcoin is the purest instrument, the best form of collateral, there is no second best. Now here we are 2-3 years later, and he's actively endorsing, whether you consider a retweet an endorsement or not, he's actively shilling DeFi protocols, which are built on leveraged versions of his STRC instruments. So obviously his incentives are to focus on promoting STRC, right? And again, there's nothing wrong with promoting STRC. There is something wrong with promoting STRC when the underlying protocols are poorly risk-tested DeFi protocols like, Saturn or Apex, where they're promising 30, 40, 50% returns. And Saylor has just completely changed from this, again, this 2-3 years ago, Saylor was a completely different person to the incentives that he has now to promote STRC. So there's so many red flags here, in my opinion, from the outside looking in, that I don't want Saylor to not succeed. But if I were an investor looking at this and analyzing whether or not I would want to allocate my dollars and my capital towards a company that I believe could compound capital over the long run, even if Bitcoin was successful, I would struggle with a lot of these competing incentives.
And the whole entire apparatus has just gotten so much more complex over the last 12 months compared to where it was when they started back in 2020, 2021. Back then, they were just stacking Bitcoin, right? Using cash flow and stacking Bitcoin. And now they've gotten to the point where they have these liabilities, these things that need to be paid out on a monthly basis. Of course, those dividends can be deferred. They are cumulative, so they'll add up, but they can pause the dividends. But as soon as they pause the dividends, the whole entire jig seems to be up. And I think you'd see an even bloodier massacre than what we're seeing right now. But I mean, Saylor's coming out with things like this. Digital credit is income for investors who believe in Bitcoin. I mean, previously the line was that like these things are as good as a savings account, that it's a money market account, right? So, I mean, what's your take on that? The whole entire marketing of these products, digital credit in general.
Well, first of all, what does believe in Bitcoin mean? I mean, again, it's such a farce, and the way that the narrative has shifted is for me the biggest red flag, is the inability to just sit back and even if you look at his Bitcoin buys, right? How is it possible that all these Ticos have bought the top and sold the bottom? That is completely antithetical to what Bitcoin is. So if Saylor was truly like, if his narrative hasn't changed in the last 3 to 4 years, and he truly only believes in Bitcoin, then why would he risk taking out excessive leverage? And again, excessive may be a strong word, but you could argue that it's not strong enough of a word because the market is testing STRC and MSTR and saying, hey, I don't trust your ability to service this debt in order for me to be compensated for that. And that's why you're seeing this depegging happen. If the market was comfortable enough in Saylor's 8 or 12 months, and Lynn Alden brought this up, right, on the initial call, this is a huge, huge red flag. The fact that he didn't do what he said he was going to do. He literally promised a certain amount of time buffer to provide these dividends. And the manner in which he's communicating this is also highly deceptive. Look at what he's come from. He said 6 months ago, 7 months ago, they had 71 months of cash reserve measured in Bitcoin. Interesting how all of this favors the manner in which he reports it. You look at things like the Sharpe ratio. The Sharpe ratio is completely manipulated. I don't want to say it's a scam because that's probably a difficult, maybe too aggressive of a word, but the manner in which he deceptively manipulates the marketing of A, the fact that the Sharpe ratio is not technically correct, B, the fact that STRC is a money-like market fund, and you've seen this kind of volatility. How could you ever compare this to something that is a true money market that's been battle-tested over the years, that has significantly lower volatility? This might be the start of quote-unquote digital credit. But to assume the same risk profile that traditionally money market funds have had is completely ignorant. And in my opinion, the marketing of that is the issue that I have. Again, I have no issue against Saylor, but it's the manner in which he, what I believe to be deceptively, is creating this narrative. Because I think it's manipulative and it's insincere to a lot of the Bitcoiners, which is why people like Parker Lewis, who I respect, are coming out and calling this inconsistent marketing.
Yeah, and also the pitch of going for Bitcoin is digital capital. He has said this for a long time, but it's money, right? And he says that in some of their marketing efforts that they turn Bitcoin into money. What? Like, what is that? Bitcoin is money. And if we don't agree on that, then it's pretty hard to come to consensus on many other things. But yeah, I mean, and all the calling out the Twitter trolls, saying it's just the Twitter trolls who said that we would never sell our Bitcoin. We told you to never sell your Bitcoin. We didn't say that strategy would never sell our Bitcoin. The man is under fire right now, Saylor. It's and rightfully so. I mean, there's been a lot of shareholder value destruction going on. I mean, it's crazy, right? It's like they've got $51 billion worth of Bitcoin, but their stock, their market cap is worth 35 billion. Right?
It's absolutely deserved. You can't take the good of Bitcoin on the way up and benefit from these cyber hornets who are actively promoting you and giving you exposure and telling you everyone how amazing you are on the way up, and then not take the criticisms on the way down. If you're going to take on excessive debt or additional debt, you have to ride the good and the bad. You can't just come into the Bitcoin world where they are highly critical and highly skeptical for very good reasons. Look what happened with FTX. Look what's happening now. No wonder the Bitcoiners are like Bitcoin maxis, right? For very good reasons. And he needs to take the brunt of this. And the market is testing him. And only time will tell as to whether or not his balance sheet is strong enough. And again, I'm sure STRC will return back to 100. The question is when and what you do in that time period. So again, I've got nothing against Saylor or STRC, but if you're going to benefit on the way up, you better be prepared to take the brunt of it on the way down. And that's what the market's pricing in here at this 35 billion. So he has $51 billion worth of Bitcoin. and his company's being valued at 35. And all the MSTR bulls are going to say, hey, look, we're totally fine. It's all good, et cetera, et cetera. You know, you might be, but you also might be deluded into oblivion before you actually ever get, you know, you guys bottom out in terms of share price. So you can claim that you're good, but the rest of the market is what's driving this. And the market is saying, I'm pricing in $16 billion deficit worth of liquidity risk because I see further downside here. So yes, technically its enterprise value is secure and it can sell Bitcoin in order to get down to where it needs to, but it's going to be a huge, huge negative signal to the market if that's what ends up happening.
Yeah, and I mean, I will get a little personal here. I stack Bitcoin. I've been stacking Bitcoin on a daily basis for over 5 years now, and I did get caught up in the Bitcoin treasury trade when MSTR was going parabolic, right? And this is the only treasury company that I've ever purchased, but I bought it around here in the 300s, right? Like I'm down 75% on my investment in MSTR. Over 2 years. And the hardest thing to deal with it is the fact that now that they've got STRC, STRC is the darling. Like that is their iPhone moment. That is the thing they care the most about and that they think that they'll be able to stack the most Bitcoin with over the long term. But dude, I'm just being diluted. I'm just having shares dumped on my face on a daily basis. Every single time they come out with these Monday reports, they just sold a crap load of MSTR Common. And as an MSTR Common holder, down 70+%. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, should I just cut my losses here and just like deal with that? I mean, it's been sort of humiliating. And how much longer are MSTR holders going to be willing to put up with that is the real question in my book.
Well, the answer is not long, and you're seeing it on the screen right now. The interesting thing is, if you just look at a chart, right, in terms of technical resistance, I'm not a technical trader, but if you look at those levels, there's a very thin amount of liquidity and price action between that $100 and what, like 60, 70. So there's like a $30 pocket now that could be breached if we continue on this path, which would be another 30% down, unsurprising. But yeah, I mean, again, you can't benefit from this on the way up as a company and not take the brunt on the way down. And I think it's irresponsible of Saylor I think he got greedy. I think his ego got the best of him and he got greedy and he started creating these narratives of, hey, we're tackling the bond market, which is the ultimate king, right? Like this is back to, you know, in the Salomon Brothers, where they started mortgage-backed securities. And eventually they were like, the equity market is such a small fraction of the bond market. We're going to go after the bond market and make the bond market securities interesting and sell those. And that's kind of what Saylor's trying to do here. It's like saying, hey, I want to go after that bond market, which is why I'm going to create this product STRC. And as you said, it's now, he told everyone, he's like, hey, STRC is more important to me than MSTR. And it's shown in the chart, right? So if you are going to be the second priority, why would you want to hold something where you know that the incentives of the CEO are first and foremost going to be with the debt holders, because that's, again, the bigger market that he's trying to chase, rather than the equity holders?
All right, we got to bring in some of the comments here from the audience. Lots of people commenting here. We got the Massacre. He says, very bad spot. STRC retail isn't coming back, and now he has to dilute MSTR like he's doing today. Don't think MSTR shareholders keep holding just to be diluted. Exactly as we were saying. Stan here over on X saying, only an idiot would think STRC is equivalent to an account in terms of risk reward, I guess. But then we got the other side. We got Dougie Style over here. He just says it's all FUD. Nobody is worried. Those that haven't done the research, like these dudes, I guess he's calling us. He says we haven't done that. STRC lost confidence, is going to collapse. MSTR will survive, says Javier. And Dougie says, I'm stacking MSTR. I can't believe it's this cheap. So
good luck, Doug. That's all I got to say. Good luck, dude. And I mean this sincerely. I mean, like, I as I said, like, I don't think STRC is not going to go back to 100. I do think it will,
dude.
But yeah, it's going to be a tough ride back out there, and it's not something that I'm psychologically strong enough to ride all the way down and then all the way back up again. So even MSTR, I am a buyer at certain levels, but I think that it's probably best just to not try catch a falling knife in order for this all to play out and kind of be more patient. But look, good for you. You've got balls of steel. If you're going to go buy MSTR down here, you're going to benefit on the way up, right? So hopefully this is the bottom, and good for you, Dougie. I'm impressed.
Yeah, and I mean, look, we're new lows on STRC as we are streaming live. But if you do zoom out on MSTR, of course, they've done this before, right? I mean, they've gone from 130 at the peak in 2021 down to $15, $13 in the depths of the bear market at the end of 2022.
Like down 80, 90%?
90%, yeah.
And so what's 90% down from the all-time high of 520-ish, 530?
That would be $50.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem unreasonable, right? Based on the price action, especially if Bitcoin drops down into the 50s for a while and hangs about there. Definitely seems like reasonable to me, at least.
Speaking of Bitcoin, yeah, we are back at this 60K level. Sort of looks like we're hanging on a thread here. We haven't been much lower in this bear market. And let's see if we can hold on to this line. Again, if you are sitting on Bitcoin in cold storage, you've got absolutely nothing to worry about, right? Like, you can just wait this out, no problem. You can't be diluted like you can if you're holding a stock. And there is no structured unwind like you could see with a preferred share. So Bitcoin in cold storage is always what we recommend here at Bitcoin News as your foundation of your financial life. So yes, if STRC loses 70 level in the coming days, weeks, it's going to collapse to 0 or close to it, down 99%. Wow, that is quite the apocalyptic.
This might be extreme flood levels, like, for us to be doing live streams today. I mean, look, that could truly happen, but this could also be very much the bottom, right? When sentiment is this bearish. But we said the same thing back in, half a month ago, early June, when everyone was like, this is the bottom and the bottom's in, blah, blah, blah. Most capitulations, or at least bottoms, are formed by time, more so than price. And it doesn't feel like this is a price capitulation to me, in which case we probably need another 2 to 3 months of confirmation that the bottom is in. And whether that be trending around 60, 55, 65, 70K, whatever that number is, I think it's a much safer bet to give it that time to confirm that capitulation through time, which is kind of the whole Ben Cowan thesis, rather than trying to catch the falling knife now, because you don't know how low it is going to go.
Yeah, can you wait it out? Hopefully you can, because Bitcoin has proven that those who do are rewarded. But it's been pretty nuts. I can't say it, but again, this is a perfect bottom signal, right? Emergency broadcast. MSTR is bleeding. We've broken down below 100. This is definitely the kind of things you see at a bottom. So maybe we are marking the bottom, and that would be good for everybody, right?
Well, that's why I think it's, as I said at the very beginning, it's important not to be emotional, and to be as logic based as possible. And when I say that, what I mean is, like, if you were to scroll out, what does 60K get us? Roughly a 52% drawdown from the all-time high.
Yeah.
Does that seem like a reasonable price bottom, or a place where price bottoms could occur? In my opinion, absolutely. Look where our previous all-time high was. There's a ton of chop solidation around that level. A lot of existing sellers from the previous bull market got out there, and new buyers came in. So, like, just look at that liquidity wall. There's absolutely no reason why we couldn't bottom out here. But that's also a pretty sloppy range, right? All the way from 58K to 65K. And there's not a lot of liquidity in between there. So could we wick down there potentially? I mean, again, it seems super reasonable to me that we wick down to the mid 40s to high 40s and bugger around between 50K, 55K, and 65K in the next 2 months, and the bottom's in. Allow all the existing on-chain metrics to reset, and all the price tails to start catching up with this new bottom formation. And it would coincide with the previous bear market as well, where Bitcoin topped at roughly that 20K range, right? 18 to 20. And then it finally broke through that again as existing buyers came in, new buyers, and the previous cycle highs were made. So yeah, I think it's definitely the bottom is definitely way more likely to be in than not.
Let's hope. Let's hope we can hold this 60K. At this moment, I would like to give a big shout out to everybody who's watching live. Almost 750 people tuning in across X and YouTube. If you're on YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. We got amazing interviews, deep dives, live streams coming out on a daily basis across the platform. Definitely worth tuning into this channel and joining in on the community. And if you're on X, hit that retweet button, get this video shared amongst the peoples, because we got a conversation to have. Jump in the comments, tell us what you're thinking, because this is a pretty emotional day. All right. And right now, I would like to do a quick shout out to our sponsors. This show would not be possible without the good people over at Rhino Bitcoin. Previously, getting access to Bitcoin financial services was slow, clunky, and scattered across all these different platforms. But Rhino is changing that. Rhino is a next generation Bitcoin banking app designed to handle all of your Bitcoin needs in one place. Here's what you can do with Rhino. Of course, you buy Bitcoin with zero fees. Get more sats for every dollar you spend. Make payments over the Lightning Network instantly, near zero fees. And send cash globally over Bitcoin rails. And of course, there's the DCA, set up automatic savings so you stack sats on your schedule and build wealth over time. And now you can get Bitcoin backed loans right within the app through Arch. It's an amazing partnership they got going on there. Soon you'll have bill pay, direct deposit, and save for retirement all in the Rhino app. So go today, download Rhino at rhinobitcoin.com. We got a link down in the description below. Use the code Bitcoin News, one word Bitcoin News, and Rhino will drop you $10 in free Bitcoin straight into your account just for getting started. Rhino is built to keep you in control of your Bitcoin every minute of every day. Go check them out. Now is a great time to stack Bitcoin because it's half off. Absolutely. Check out Rhino. Great people, great product. And they help make the show possible.
Quickly, I do think it's worth mentioning the whole Bitcoin lending scenario, because typically we've heard a lot of people say lending is bad, never loan out your Bitcoin, it's too high risk, Bitcoin's too volatile. But where we are in the market at the moment, like if you ever were going to take out a loan, I think between now and the next 3 months, 6 months, whenever you think that final bottom is going to occur, is probably the best time to do so. I mean, if you take out a 50% loan, your liquidation price is pretty far down from 60Ks. And I mean, the probability of us going down into the 30s, I think, is just incredibly, incredibly low. So for anyone out there, like kind of who's been flirting with the idea of taking a loan, again, if you are willing to take that risk, now is probably one of the better times to do so at peak FUD bottoms, where like there is so much fear going on, right? It's unlikely that we go down into the 20Ks or something stupid like that.
I think we got to check in on this analysis here from Ki Young Ju, the CEO of Crypto Quant. He lays out some very practical, but could be hard to swallow advice for the strategy team. He says strategies BTC buying here looks more like a liquidity sink than a price catalyst. They should pause Bitcoin purchases, rebuild cash reserves, and adopt a systemic framework for purchase timing. In a low selling pressure environment, that demand can move price meaningfully. Under current conditions, with selling pressure clearly elevated, it may do little more than defend the range. Bitcoin's realized cap grew by 467 billion over the past 2 years, yet price is actually down 1%. Even with hundreds of billions of capital flowing into the market, all that happens is a change of hands. Price doesn't move up. Worse, continuous buying may prevent a deeper market clearing drawdown, giving more holders the liquidity and confidence to take profits. Do you agree with this, right? Like, you think that we need to see that final swoop down. And is Saylor preventing that from happening?
I mean, potentially, but not for the reason you would think. I think I've seen a lot of narratives out there that are giving MSTR and Saylor what I believe to be unwarranted credit for driving Bitcoin's price up or down. And I think that in reality, strategy buying or selling, first off, if they were to buy or sell, when they do so, it's not in large enough increments to move the market. So for them to actually meaningfully create a systemic negative risk to Bitcoin flushing down, quote unquote, is, in my opinion, very unlikely. I don't think them selling Bitcoin, they would have to sell like a third or even half of their Bitcoin holdings. And even if they were to do that, I don't necessarily see that driving Bitcoin's price more than, a few percent. So Bitcoin's market is big enough to warrant Now we can see the 60K line being defended super
Yes.
down by the bulls. So at least we have some support down there. But yeah, I don't think Saylor is big enough to necessarily quote unquote move the market right now, unless he were to liquidate a large, like 20% plus portion of his Bitcoin stack. In terms of the flush, I think the flush is created by the wider market and the negative sentiment that's created when someone reads about Saylor selling, not necessarily Saylor selling himself. Do you know what I mean? So Saylor could turn around and sell 10% of his Bitcoin stack for MicroStrategy, and that would create a catalyst for other people, let's say, you know, longs or shorts, to go find out and snipe out different pockets of liquidity. I know there's a huge wall down at 48. I know there's a huge wall at, I think, 55 or 58. So it would make logical sense for the market to drop to those levels based on the narrative. But right, prices doesn't follow narrative. Price starts out, and the narrative is what people use to justify why the price has gone up or down most of the time, right? At least that's what I believe. So,
all right, let's continue on this because I think there's a lot of alpha in here. So normally, Bitcoin cycles reset through crashes, capitulation, weak hand exits, and whale accumulation. This cycle has been different so far. Bitcoin has moved sideways in a wide range for almost 2 years. It hasn't been strong enough to confirm a new bull market, but not weak enough to force real capitulation. As a result, weak hands have not been fully flushed out, and strong hands have not reaccumulated aggressively. The market may need a proper reset before it can build a stronger recovery rather than continue drifting sideways. Bitcoin is structurally scarce, but scarcity does not make timing irrelevant. Respectfully, what Saylor should do next is, all right, this is his plan. Could this plan save STRC and MSTR? All right, well, let's see what he has to say. First, pause BTC purchases until cash reserves and dividend coverage are restored. So that means that he would need to dump more MSTR on us common shareholders to build up that cash reserve. 2, a systemic model-driven purchase framework. Strategy always buys the local top has become a real market meme. Buying whenever capital is available is not a strategy. And 3, create a disciplined selling framework for the next bull market. Partial sales near cycle highs would not mean abandoning Bitcoin. It would deleverage the company, realize shareholder value, and create dry powder to reaccumulate lower. That's not trading. It's risk management. What do you think to this 3-part plan here?
Well, first off, it is trading. You can call it whatever you want, but it is trading Bitcoin. And I think he should absolutely do it. Why wouldn't you try and quote unquote time Bitcoin if you have excessive debt? If he didn't take on any debt and all Saylor did was just continue to buy Bitcoin with their balance sheet, which they could never do in the first place, right? Because they're a struggling software company, then it makes sense to do that. But if you're taking on additional amounts of debt, why would you want to risk that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, from him going from never sell your Bitcoin to selling 32 Bitcoin to saying they might sell more in the future. I mean, the strategy obviously needs an update here. STRC was supposed to be the magic bullet. This thing cannot keep par, and now they need to pivot. But I mean, I think Saylor's been very good at realizing when he needs to pivot, and he's been able to. I mean, he goes against his guidance a lot of the times. I mean, remember when they said that they wouldn't dilute below 2.5 MNAV? Well, how did that go, right? So there's been a lot of promises that were sort of stepped back upon, but this is an experiment. It's one of the biggest experiments in capital markets, and respect to him for the guts it takes to do this in the public, and he definitely takes a lot of heat for doing so. The question is, what is best for Bitcoin? Some are saying that Saylor should chill on the Bitcoin purchases and go out and buy distressed Bitcoin treasury companies that are selling at about 50% of their Bitcoin value. What do you think about that plan?
That would be so hilarious if if Naka ended up actually getting taken out by Saylor. If something like that were to happen, I just feel like, you know, Naka gets a lot of hate and it's totally deserved. But if Saylor came along and bailed him out, that would just be the most comical situation ever. I also don't necessarily know if Sata and Strive are necessarily out of the woods just yet. So perhaps that becomes, a target for Saylor. Now, obviously, it's a little bit early in the whole life cycle to say this, but Matt Cole was actually asked that question on I think it was CoinDesk or one of the news shows he was on. He says, is Strive going to be an accumulator, or is he going to be basically taken out and bought out by another group? And his answer was neither. So that was I thought that was an interesting response. But why not? I mean, look how many treasury companies there are. Are you telling me that all these guys are in such good standing with their shareholders, with their with their balance sheets, that they wouldn't entertain Saylor coming in and buying them at 50 cents on the dollar? And to be honest, it's not up to them. It's not necessarily up to management. It's up to the shareholders. So it really depends like how they've been capitalized. We've also got Adam Back coming on with their treasury company, right? So that's happening in, I think, 2 days' time is where they're finalizing that. So on Friday, they'll be, I think, 4th or 5th on the board. Also, a lot of these companies on BitcoinTreasuries.net, some of them are more so AI companies or Bitcoin miners, and they are quote unquote Bitcoin treasury co's in that sense. So it doesn't mean that they shouldn't be on this list. It's just not they're not necessarily targets for MSTR if he were to acquire them. But to be totally frank, I think Saylor should be worrying about protecting his own balance sheet before going out and announcing that he's going to acquire any of these companies. The narrative that he would pitch, I imagine, is, hey, we're buying Bitcoin at a discount. But the retort to that would be, well, your Bitcoin is already valued at a discount by the market. So why are you even concerned about going and buying other people's Bitcoin at a discount when your company is already being valued at a discount, right? It's kind of ironic. I don't know what you think. You think it's a likely outcome that some of these are picked up by Saylor?
I think Fong Li has made it clear that is not on their roadmap, at least right now. You can't
trust what they say because they pivot every 3 to 6 months and communicate in an inconsistent manner, like with the Sharpe ratio. So how can you trust what they say?
Yeah,
at this point is my issue.
Well, I think that for Strive, this similar acquisition actually did work out for their benefit. It was able to get them to that 10,000 plus BTC in order for them to issue their preferred and get to that level that the markets could accept them doing this play. I mean, of course, SATA, SATA is below $100 par right now as well. It is at $91. It is not as brutally beat up as STRC, but
everyone was saying that Strive was safe 2 to 3 days ago. That DPEG, look at that. That DPEG happened when? It was trading at 100. Everyone was happy. It was fine and dandy. And then all of a sudden, in what?
Yeah, this is a week ago.
Yeah, a week ago. Okay, so a week, 5 business days. And things have just gone from bad to worse. I mean, look, it's much smaller than STRC, but it's definitely not fine. And again, a lot of this is retail, where it's difficult to manage those psychological illiquidity expectations that you have.
Yeah, man. I mean, and again, like, we are sort of in a bubble. This is the Kospi index, the Korean stock market. Of course, it's tripled in like a year. So this thing has gone parabolic. This is an entire stock index has tripled in a year, right? Based off of 2 names, Samsung and SK Hynix, 2 chip manufacturers. So like there's a lot of froth in the market. And of course, Bitcoin gets hit because it's one of the most liquid things out there, trading 24/7. And if people want to rotate or they need to raise cash because they're over leveraged, Bitcoin usually is a source of funds for those needs. But yeah, I mean,
like, say that, but I would actually argue, I would take the counter to that, because everyone is turning around and saying, hey, like semis, AI, it's all a bubble. It's withdrawing money from Bitcoin. And if that's true, then technically a correction from that would be beneficial for Bitcoin, right? Because what you could argue is most people have already liquid their crypto holdings, especially their altcoins and the other shitcoins, in order to buy and bid up the prices of semiconductors, of AI stocks, etc. So the fact that they got there wasn't necessarily because it was net new money entering the system. It was existing money rotating out of crypto or Bitcoin, which is the biggest, crypto, so back into bidding up those prices. So you could argue that Bitcoin is more insulated if there was an AI bubble than the other way around, because the capital is already rotated out.
Mm-hmm.
Chart is telling you, because we've gone from 126 down to 60K.
Yeah, I could see that as well, right? Where stocks enter into a bear market and Bitcoin's already been in one for 6 6+ months, and thus is looking attractive at these valuations, especially as a place to rotate into.
And so just to clarify, I'm not saying Bitcoin won't go down. I'm just saying if the cost B corrects 80%, do I think Bitcoin's going to correct 80%, having already been in the bear market for 6 months, 7 months? Highly unlikely. Maybe it goes down another 20% or 15%. But, most of the money has already been sucked out of the market in order to bid up those stocks. So, a small correction in the S&P and the NASDAQ of 10 or 20%, maybe that's the same for Bitcoin rather than it being 30 or 40 or 50%, because typically Bitcoin's a magnified move because it's further out in the risk spectrum, right? So, yeah, I mean, you could make the opposite argument that Bitcoin holds, relatively speaking, more resilient because of where the NASDAQ sits at the moment.
Yeah, man. And I think let's close out on the tweet that you shared with me earlier. Semper Vigilantes. I mean, the haters are really coming out in force on MSTR, but Semper Vigilantes. This guy has been putting out a lot of hate on MSTR, but he's got some points here. The one that we wanted to look at, of course, was he was reviewing the play that BitPain was talking about, of taking your mortgage money and putting it into STRC, which is kind of rough. Do you have a link to that?
Let me see if I can find it.
Yeah, I mean, the gift that keeps on giving. A lot of MSTR bulls have been posting throughout the course with MSTR in the $100 plus range. It's so cheap, it can't get any cheaper. Well, it has crashed below $100.
Yeah, I'm also curious as to whether or not those people who tweet that, like, are they actively buying at these levels, or have you already? Is it like that Bitcoin meme where it's like, stack more sats with what fear? It's like, keep buying the dip, but with what? It feels like it's the same thing with MicroStrategy. Surely, if you've been buying it all this time and you think it's such a good discount, you've been buying at 110, at 120, at 150, all the way down 70% from the 420 or the 520 that it peaked at, right? So where is this money coming from that you're buying this MSTR dip, having bought it consistently for the last year and a half, because you've been totally inundated by the Saylor narrative, which is a very compelling narrative, right? Who doesn't want 13 or 11% every year in a money market fund? But the irony is that if it's too good to be true, or if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And there's a reason that money market funds yield 2 to 4%, because they truly are safe and have been battle tested by the market and don't incur this kind of volatility risk or this illiquidity risk that these instruments are creating. So yeah, it's interesting time to hop onto a live stream and chat through.
Yeah, no, I think that we did our job here. We reviewed the current state of the market, gave some ways in which Saylor could see a way out of this mess. Either way, it's going to take time, right? It definitely feels as if they need to rebuild trust with both STRC and MSTR holders. And in order to do that, you need to show a clear path forward, one that at this moment sort of seems lacking. So Saylor, we think that he has definitely been a net positive for Bitcoin, getting the message out there, accumulating a lot of it. But at the same time, the whole entire apparatus has gotten way more complex over the last 2 years. And now we're seeing that on
a positive flywheel either. Like, that's a huge unanswered question, right? Everyone's seen the positive flywheel on the way up, and now on the way down, it's this negative flywheel. How do you get back into convincing the market that you're able to generate that accretive Bitcoin per share, or CEB, or whatever metric you're using? That is a huge unanswered question. How do you get back to that state? And is that just Bitcoin going up? In which case, that's a big question mark. Like, not everyone knows how to time that.
Yeah, man, it's going to be interesting. But of course, as we said, hold Bitcoin in cold storage and wait it out. Go out, touch grass. It is the summer. Go enjoy time with friends and family. The World Cup is on. What's up?
Go watch the World Cup.
Go watch the World Cup. Yeah, bread and
There's
circuses.
a lot
Bread
of
and circuses while your hard money grinds through this bear market, and we'll see you on the other side. But Publius, thank you so much. This has been a really, I think, informative hour, 45 minutes. You definitely have the you've been studying your MSTR. You've got opinions, and I'm thankful that you came on today to share them with the audience.
Anytime. Have a good one.
Cheers. All right, everybody. This is Rob, your host for Bitcoin News. We are live every single Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern. Be sure to check out our interviews that come out on Mondays and now Fridays as well. We got clips, live streams, everything in between. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time,